Most recently, what he did was he went on Instagram and took a video of himself talking about, first he was talking about how some woman came up to him and handed him like a Splenda packet, and like on there she had written some sort of a supportive message or something, and he was talking about how great that made him feel. And and I'm sure that probably, I would imagine that right now he probably feels pretty isolated in the world, because I think that there are a lot of people within Hollywood and outside of Hollywood that have spoken out about him in ways that he probably doesn't like very much. And Eric Hunley says Alec Baldwin is telling Jussie Smollett to hold his beer. Yes, yes, he is. Thanks, Eric. I'm glad to have you here. but so I would imagine that it probably is actually like it's something that he wants to talk about, because it probably actually hits him in the heart in a very real way.
Like
I
a bullet.
Doubt that. Good one. That's a good one. But then he goes on to talk about the whole issue about the search warrant for his phone. So what happened was the New Mexico or the Santa Fe Police Department, they asked him for access to his phone, just like they asked for the armorer and the assistant director. They asked for everybody's phone so that they can get photos and whatever information that they wanted that was related to the investigation that would kind of help them thoroughly investigate this whole thing. Apparently, the other two gave access to their phones, I think even without a warrant. But Alec Baldwin's lawyers said, get a warrant. We're not going to do it without a warrant, which is fine. That's perfectly well within his rights. And so they did. And then apparently, then the Santa Fe Police Department said, okay, here's your warrant. And then Alec Baldwin's lawyer said, well, no, Alec Baldwin is in New York, so you need to get one that is enforceable in the state of New York. So they had to then kind of go around and link up with the New York Police Department, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so they're in that whole process. And so his statement that he made was that he seems particularly irked about the fact that people are saying that he has not complied with the warrant for his phone, which is true. It's actually true. But what he said in that statement was that it was not true. And then he goes on to talk about the process of, what they're doing with going through, the New York Police Department, the Santa Fe Police Department, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a distinction, and it could very well be that he just doesn't necessarily understand the difference between those two terms, because he's not a lawyer, right? He is a lay person. However, it seems like, as a lawyer, I would not want him to be talking about this, because it just makes him look worse in the public eye, because he's saying, I'm complying. And oh, by the way, we're ready to comply when the whole process has been properly, gone through the full ramp, and gotten to from X to Y to Z. And once it gets there, we will totally comply with it. But in all reality, it seems like his lawyers, and it's well within their rights, that they are able to sort of play the loopholes as much as they can to sort of delay this, frustrate the process, make things a little bit harder. But it doesn't make him look innocent. It doesn't make him look like the good guy in the situation. It looks like he's trying to hide something, and it very much makes makes this into a situation where it looks like the Barbra Streisand effect. Whereas maybe there was nothing on the phone. Maybe there was nothing that was particularly interesting. Or,
well, I'm sure there's nothing on the phone anymore.
Well, whenever you do, like when I was a prosecutor, I wrote a whole bunch of these warrants. And the issue is that sometimes you'll go to the defendant and you'll say, well, hey, listen, I want to search your phone. And one or two things that happen. Either they'll say, no, get a warrant, or they'll say, okay, we'll give you the things that are, and I'm assuming that happened. That probably happened here with this case, is that the Alec Baldwin's attorneys were like, we got stuff on the phone that we don't want you to see. So we'll give you the things that we think are relevant. But as investigators, you're saying, you know, do you trust the target of the investigation to only give you things that are relevant to the investigation off the phone? So generally, you want to see everything, and then what you'll do is like all the other stuff. You'll say, you know, it's like I didn't see that, but I'm looking, but I want to make sure I see everything to get a full context of what I'm looking at. So I think that's the fight with Alec Baldwin, is that he probably has stuff on that phone he doesn't want anyone else to see. And I think he even mentioned it in that video, like, you know, letters from my wife, and which is, you know, probably BS. But whatever, all these other little things that he doesn't want other people to see, that's why he's struggling to give it over. But the argument between compliance and non-compliance, it's like right there down the line. For instance, the job of his attorneys is to make sure the government jumps through every single hoop it needs to jump through to get through the process to get his phone legally. So if there's a warrant and I say, well, I'll give you my phone, I'll comply, but I want you to jump through every hoop that you legally have to jump through to get it, then he's technically right? I'm going to comply. I just want to make sure they follow every step legally they need to do for me to be able to turn it over. So in one instance, he is, you know, he's fighting it a little bit, but if he's just saying, hey, just go through the proper procedure and I'll hand it over to you, then I think he's able to still say, like, you know, I'm complying, but I just want them to go through jump through all the hoops.
Yeah. No, I think, and it could also be that they also plan to argue about the scope of the warrant as well. You know, later on when whatever evidence they've gotten from the phone that they, you know, have deemed that is, you know, relevant or necessary for the investigation, you know, that in order to admit that stuff into evidence at trial or, you know, or what have you, that they may want to argue about that too. So, you know, there also is the possibility that they're looking at this as, you know, we need to fight this, like Nate was saying, every step of the way, so that we make sure that we preserve all of our arguments, you know, ultimately for those later arguments later on down the line. We can't just like allow them to take this stuff and then say, oh, no, you weren't supposed to take that. If you didn't fight it at the beginning, you usually can't fight it later on down the road.